the city-states of Athens and Eretria had aided the unsuccessful Ionian revolt against the Persian Empire of Darius I in 499 to 494 BC. Although the rebellion was crushed by the Persians and the status quo was restored, Darius considered that the insolence of the Greek city-states was a threat to the integrity of his empire, so he vowed to punish them, especially the Athenians. Darius then launched an amphibious expeditionary force under Datis and Artaphernes in 490 BC, which attacked Naxos before receiving the submission of the other Cycladic islands. It then besieged and destroyed Eretria. Finally, it moved to attack Athens, landing at the Bay of Marathon, where it was met by a heavily outnumbered Athenian army. At the ensuing Battle of Marathon, the Athenians won a remarkable victory, which resulted in the withdrawal of the Persian army to Asia. This defeat did not represent irreplaceable losses for the Persians, so Darius began to gather another army, with many more soldiers and resources, to subjugate all of Greece. However, Darius died while preparing to march on Egypt, and the throne of Persia passed to his son Xerxes I, who rushed the Egyptian revolt and quickly restarted preparations for the invasion of Greece, which was to be a full-scale invasion supported by long-term planning, stockpiling, and conscription. By early 480 BC, the preparations were complete, and the army which Xerxes had mustered at Sardis marched towards Europe, crossing the Hellespont on 2 pontoon bridges. The Athenians had not been idle. They were preparing for war with the Persians since the mid-480s BC, and in 482 BC the decision was taken, under the strategic guidance of the Athenian politician Themistocles, to build a massive fleet of triremes to resist the Persians. In 481 BC, Xerxes sent ambassadors around Greece, requesting earth and water, but very deliberately omitting Athens and Sparta. Thus, support began to wavering, but nevertheless, a confederate alliance of Greek city-states was formed. Themistocles suggested a strategy to the Greeks. The route to southern Greece would require Xerxes' army to travel through the very narrow pass of Thermopylae, which could easily be blocked by the Greek hoplites, jamming up the overwhelming force of Persians. Furthermore, to prevent the Persians from bypassing Thermopylae by sea, the Athenian and allied navies could block the Straits of Artemisium. Congress adopted this dual-pronged strategy. However, in case of Persian breakthrough, the Peloponnesian cities made fallback plans to defend the Isthmus of Corinth, while the women and children of Athens would evacuate en masse to the Peloponnesian city of Troezen. The Persian army seems to have made slow progress through Thrace and Macedon. News of the imminent Persian approach eventually reached Greece in August thanks to a Greek spy. At this time of the year, the Spartans, de facto military leaders of the alliance, were celebrating the festival of Carnea, which prohibits any military operation by Spartan law, as happened in Marathon, preventing the Spartans from supporting the Athenians. On this occasion, the ephors decided the urgency was sufficiently great to justify an advance expedition to block the pass, under one of its kings, Leonidas, who took with him the 300 men of the royal bodyguard. The oracle of Delphi was also consulted and delivered a prophetic message to the Spartans, foretelling the impending conflict, where it was said that Sparta will be destroyed by a foreign power, or a Spartan king would die. Herodotus tells us that Leonidas, in line with the prophecy, was convinced he was going to certain death since his forces were not adequate for a victory, and so he selected only Spartans with living sons. The Spartan force was reinforced en route to Thermopylae by contingents from various cities and numbered more than 7,000 by the time it arrived at the pass. Leonidas chose to camp at and defend the middle gate, the narrowest part of the pass of Thermopylae, where the Phocians had built a defensive wall some time before. News also reached Leonidas, from the nearby city of Trachis, that there was a mountain track that could be used to outflank the pass of Thermopylae. Therefore, Leonidas stationed 1,000 Phocians on the heights to prevent such a maneuver. When the Persian army arrived, the Greeks maintained a war council, where the decision to resist in the pass of Thermopylae was confirmed. Xerxes sent a Persian emissary to negotiate with Leonidas. The Greeks were offered their freedom, the title friends of the Persian people, and the opportunity to resettle on land better than that they possessed. When Leonidas refused these terms, the ambassador carried a written message by Xerxes, asking him to hand over your arms. Leonidas' famous response to the Persians was, "Come and take them." Many modern historians, who usually consider Herodotus more reliable, add the 1,000 Lacedaemonians and the 900 Helots to Herodotus' 5,200 to obtain 7,100, or about 7,000 men, as the standard number. The number of troops which Xerxes mustered for the second invasion of Greece has been the subject of endless dispute. Modern scholarly estimates are generally in the range 120,000 to 300,000. On the 5th day after the Persian arrival at Thermopylae, and the first day of the battle, Xerxes finally resolved to attack the Greeks. First, he ordered 5,000 archers to shoot a barrage of arrows, but they were ineffective. They shot from at least 100 yards away, and the Greeks' wooden shields and bronze helmets deflected the arrows. After that, Xerxes sent a force of 10,000 Medes and Scythians to take the defenders prisoner and bring them before him. The Persians soon launched a frontal assault, in waves of around 10,000 men, on the Greek position. The Greeks fought in front of the Phocian wall, at the narrowest part of the pass, which enabled them to use as few soldiers as possible. The Greeks, in their traditional phalanx formation, could hold out against the larger numbers of the Persians. The weaker shields and shorter spears and swords of the Persians prevented them from effectively engaging the Greek hoplites. Units were rotated in and out of the battle to prevent fatigue. According to Decisive, the first wave was cut to ribbons, with only 2 or 3 Spartans killed and returned. According to Herodotus and Diodorus, the king, having taken the measure of the enemy, threw his best troops into a second assault the same day, the Immortals, an elite corps of 10,000 men. However, the Immortals fared no better than the Medes, and failed to make any headway against the Greeks. The Spartans reportedly used a tactic of feigning retreat, and then turning and killing the enemy troops when they ran after them. On the second day, Xerxes again sent in the infantry to attack the pass, supposing that their enemies, being so few, were now disabled by wounds and could no longer resist. However, the Persians had no more success on the second day than on the first. Xerxes at last stopped the assault and withdrew to his camp, totally perplexed. Later that day, however, as the Persian king was pondering what to do next, he received a windfall. A Trachinian named Ephialtes informed him of the mountain path around Thermopylae, and offered to guide the Persian army. Until this day, the word Ephialtes means nightmare in the Greek language. Xerxes sent his commander, Hydarnes, that evening, with the men under his command and the Immortals, about 20,000 men, to encircle the Greeks via the path. At daybreak on the third day, the Phocians guarding the path above Thermopylae became aware of the outflanking Persian column by the rustling of oak leaves. Herodotus says they jumped up and were greatly amazed. The Persians were scared that they might be Spartans, but were informed by Ephialtes that they were not. The Phocians retreated to a nearby hill to make their stand, assuming the Persians had come to attack them. However, not wishing to be delayed, the Persians merely shot a volley of arrows at them, before bypassing them, to continue with their encirclement of the main Greek force. Learning from a runner that the Phocians had not held the path, Leonidas called a council of war at dawn. Some of the Greeks argued for withdrawal, but Leonidas resolved to stay at the pass with the Spartans. Upon discovering that his army had been encircled, Leonidas told his allies that they could leave if they wanted to. While many of the Greeks took him up on his offer and fled, around 2,000 soldiers stayed behind to fight and die. The contingent of 700 Thespians, led by their general Demophilus, and the 400 Thebans, refused to leave and committed themselves to the fight. Leonidas' actions have been the subject of much discussion. It has been suggested that Leonidas, recalling the words of the oracle, was committed to sacrificing his life in order to save Sparta, and more commonly, that they were obeying the laws of Sparta by not retreating. At dawn, a Persian force of 10,000 men, comprising light infantry and cavalry, charged at the front of the Greek formation. The Greeks this time sallied forth from the wall to meet the Persians in the wider part of the pass, in an attempt to slaughter as many Persians as they could. They fought with spears, until every spear was shattered, and then switched to short swords. In this struggle, Herodotus states that 2 of Xerxes' brothers fell, Abracomes and Hyperanthes. Leonidas also died in the assault, shot down by Persian archers, and the 2 sides fought over his body, but the Greeks managed to take it. As the immortals approached, the Greeks withdrew, and took a stand on a hill behind the wall. Tearing down part of the wall, Xerxes ordered the hill surrounded, and the Persians rained down arrows until every last Greek was dead. Following Thermopylae, the Persian army proceeded to sack and burn Plataea and Thespiae, before it marched on the now evacuated city of Athens, and accomplished the Achaemenid destruction of Athens. Meanwhile, the Greeks, for the most part Peloponnesians, preparing to defend the Isthmus of Corinth, demolished the single road that led through it, and built a wall across it, in order to block it, as they did with Thermopylae, requiring his navy to do the same. However, instead of a mere blockade, Themistocles persuaded the Greeks to seek a decisive victory against the Persian fleet. Luring the Persian navy into the Straits of Salamis, the Greek fleet was able to destroy much of the Persian fleet in the Battle of Salamis, which essentially ended the threat to the Peloponnese.